as I trudged along the dusty road, my muscles aching under the weight of an oversized backpack and a bulky gym bag. Sweat trickled down my face, soaking through my black t-shirt and leaving it streaked with white. Even my socks and sneakers were drenched. "Alexander, hurry up," my mom's voice carried from up ahead. Somehow still full of energy despite the oppressive heat, I mumbled under my breath, willing my legs to move faster. How she managed to walk so confidently in this weather was beyond me. Her white dyed hair, pulled back in a neat ponytail, bounced with each step. Unlike me, she didn't seem bothered by the temperature at all. In her crisp white t-shirt, we passed by high fences concealing elite vacation homes, their grandeur hidden from view. Finally, Mom stopped at a large iron gate, fishing out a set of keys with practiced ease. She unlocked it and swung it open. A white gravel path stretched before us, winding its way through carefully manicured bushes and trees. It led to an open terrace, with a beautiful expansive porch to one side. I noticed a wide paved path to the garage, covered by a green fence that blended seamlessly with the designer courtyard. Everything about the place screamed meticulous planning. There was a recreation area, complete with a barbecue and stove, and a massive table that practically shouted wealth and power. The plantings were clearly designed to ensure a constant display of flowers or fruits from April through October. As we stepped inside, the cool darkness of the house was a welcome relief. Mom breathed a contented sigh, setting her bag down on the hallway table before heading straight for the kitchen. I followed, taking in the spotless interior. Everything was in its place, from the gleaming countertops to the large refrigerator built seamlessly into the cabinetry. "What do you want to eat?" I called out, peering into the well-stocked fridge. "There's grilled chicken, sausage, cheese, tomatoes, cabbage, watermelon, even black and red caviar." Mom laughed. "You could have stopped at chicken. Maybe I'll fry some potatoes." My stomach growled in protest. "Nah, I'm starving. Let's just have it with bread. But first I need a shower." "You want to go first? Go ahead," she replied. "I'll eat something while I wait." I nodded, grateful for the chance to wash off the grime from our journey. As I headed for one of the 3 indoor bathrooms, I couldn't help but marvel at the house. It was clear the owner spared no expense, even going so far as to build an outdoor bathroom in the backyard, complete with a toilet, shower room, and garden equipment shed. The contrast between the meticulously landscaped front yard and the more practical backyard was stark, but both areas spoke of a strong hands-on owner. I knew most of the upkeep was likely done by hired help, but I'd heard that when the owner visited, he worked tirelessly building things or helping his wife in the garden. After my shower, I stepped outside, curious to explore more of the property. The silence struck me immediately. Even the insects seemed to be hiding from the relentless sun. The tall grass, dry and golden, swayed gently in a barely perceptible breeze. The air was thick, with the scent of hay and sun-baked earth. I spotted Mom standing perfectly still, her eyes closed and a serene expression on her face. She seemed to be drinking in the quiet, savoring this rare moment of peace, not wanting to disturb her. I crept closer to what looked like a wooden booth with a black tank on its roof. The structure was beautifully crafted, painted white, with boards fitted so tightly you could barely see the joints. Small, unglazed windows sat just under the roof, and the door had 4 vertical slots. The hooks for clothes and towels hung nearby, with a shoe shelf below. Curious, I peeked inside. The walls were covered in a war-colored mosaic, depicting bathers and Roman baths. A simple press of a regulator on the wall would start, the water flowing not from a shower head but directly from the ceiling, covering a small area in the center of the cabin. Shelves held an array of gels, shampoos, and washcloths. I stepped back out, still marveling at the attention to detail. It was then that I noticed Mom had disappeared. Assuming she'd gone back to the house, I decided to head inside and maybe grab that food we talked about earlier. As I walked, I found myself thinking about Mom. She'd raised me alone, never remarrying. After Dad left as the deputy director of a construction materials company, she rarely took time off. I'd been lucky enough to visit the sea twice a year, never wanting for anything, but I couldn't remember the last time she'd taken a real vacation. I was still lost in thought when I entered the kitchen, nearly colliding with Mom as she exited. She let out a small yelp of surprise, stumbling backward. I reached out instinctively to steady her, my hands grasping her shoulders. For a moment we stood there, frozen. I became acutely aware of how close we were, of the scent of her shampoo, of the warmth of her skin under my palms. A strange tension filled the air, something I'd never felt before, at least not with her. Confused and a little shaken, I quickly dropped my hands and stepped back. "Sorry," I mumbled, not quite meeting her eyes. "Didn't see you there." Mom cleared her throat, smoothing down her shirt. "No harm done," she said, her voice a touch higher than usual. "I was just coming to find you. How about we check out that river you were asking about earlier?" I nodded, grateful for the distraction. "Yeah, sounds good. Let me just grab a quick bite first," as I rummaged through the fridge, pulling out a chicken leg and a ripe tomato. I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that had come over me. Something had shifted ever so slightly in the way I saw my mother. It was probably nothing, I told myself, just the heat and the unfamiliar surroundings playing tricks on my mind. Little did I know this was only the beginning of a summer that would change everything. I followed Mom down a narrow path leading into the woods, my mind still reeling from our earlier encounter. The forest enveloped us in its cool embrace, a welcome respite from the scorching heat. The air was thick, with the aroma of ripe berries and nuts, while a symphony of bird songs and rustling leaves played around us. "Mom," I called out, realizing she'd gotten a bit ahead. "Wait up!" She turned, and I nearly stumbled. She was wearing a thin nightgown, definitely not what I'd expected for our walk to the river. The fabric clung to her curves in a way that made me uncomfortable. Yet I couldn't look away. "What's wrong?" she asked, noticing my hesitation. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Nothing, just isn't that your nightgown." She glanced down, as if just realizing what she was wearing. "Oh, this?" It was on top of my bag. "Does it matter?" I shrugged, not trusting myself to speak. We continued walking, and I found myself hyper-aware of her presence, of the way she moved, of every subtle shift of the fabric against her skin. The path opened up to reveal a clearing by the river. A wooden pier extended out over the crystal-clear water, and I could see fish swimming beneath the surface. A picnic area with a gazebo and cooking shelter sat nearby, along with a small boathouse. The whole area was surrounded by bushes and reeds, creating a private little oasis. "Well," Mom said, turning to me with a smile, "aren't you going to swim?" I hesitated, suddenly self-conscious. "What about you?" She waved a hand dismissively. "I didn't bring a swimsuit. You go ahead." Before I could respond, she was already heading towards the pier. I watched transfixed as she reached the end and, without warning, dove gracefully into the water. The nightgown clung to her body as she surfaced, leaving little to the imagination. My heart was pounding as I stripped down to my shorts and followed her into the water. The initial shock of cold was a welcome distraction from the confusing thought swirling in my head. We swam in silence for a while, neither of us quite meeting the other's eyes. The tension from earlier seemed to have followed us into the water, growing heavier with each passing moment. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Alexander," she said softly, treading water near me, "we need to talk about what's happening here." I felt a mix of relief and apprehension. "What do you mean?" She sighed, running a hand through her wet hair. "I think you know, this tension between us. It's not right." I nodded, unable to form words. She was right. Of course, these feelings, whatever they were, couldn't be allowed to continue. We're mother and son. She continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't." She trailed off, and I found myself moving closer, drawn by some force I couldn't understand or resist. We were so close. Now I could see the water droplets clinging to her eyelashes. "Mom," I breathed by hand, reaching out to touch her face. For a moment the world stood still. Then, with a sharp intake of breath, she pulled away. "No," she said, firmly though. I could hear the tremor in her voice. "We can't. Alexander, this is wrong." The spell broke in. I felt a wave of shame wash over me. "I'm sorry," I mumbled, unable to meet her eyes. I don't know what came over me. Mom took a deep breath, visibly trying to compose herself. It's okay. We're both tired in this place. It's easy to get caught up in the moment. Let's just forget this happened all right. I nodded, grateful for the out she was offering. We swam back to the pier in silence, the weight of our near transgression hanging heavy between us. As we climbed out of the water, I couldn't help but steal glances at Mom. The wet nightgown left little to the imagination, and I felt a pang of guilt at the desire that still coursed through me. I think I'm going to head back to the house, Mom said, wringing water from her hair. Why don't you stay and enjoy the swim? I'll start preparing dinner. I watched her walk away, conflicting emotions battling within me. Part of me wanted to call her back to finish what we'd almost started, but I knew she was right. We couldn't cross that line, no matter how tempting it might be. Sighing, I dove back into the water, hoping the physical exertion would clear my head. But as I swam lap after lap, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The rest of this vacation suddenly stretched before me, filled with both anticipation and dread. Back at the house, I found Mom in the kitchen, chopping vegetables with perhaps more force than necessary. She changed into more appropriate clothing, but I could still see the outline of her body in my mind's eye. Need any help? I offered, hovering awkwardly in the doorway. She jumped slightly at the sound of my voice, then forced a smile. Sure, you can set the table. We worked in silence, the air thick with unspoken words as we sat down to eat. Mom finally spoke Alexander about what happened at the river. I held up a hand, stopping her. It's okay. Mom, you were right. We got caught up in the moment, but it won't happen again. I promise. She nodded, relief evident on her face. Good. That's good. We ate dinner, making stilted small talk about the house and our plans for the vacation. But underneath it all, I could feel a current of tension, of possibility despite our words, despite our best intentions. I knew this wasn't over as I lay in bed that night, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling. I couldn't help but wonder what the coming days would bring. We'd opened a door that couldn't easily be closed, and I wasn't sure I wanted to close it at all. Sleep eluded me as memories of the day played on repeat in my mind. The feeling of Mom's skin under my hands, the way her wet nightgown clung to her body, the look in her eyes just before she pulled away. I knew it was wrong, knew we could never act on these feelings. But in the dark of night, with only my thoughts for company, it was hard to remember why morning came too soon. Sunlight streaming through the curtains. I'd forgotten to close. I could hear Mom moving around in the kitchen, the smell of coffee wafting up to my room. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for another day of pretending everything was normal. But as I made my way downstairs, a small part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, normal wasn't what either of us really wanted anymore. As I entered the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled my senses. Mom stood at the counter, her back to me, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. She was wearing a light summer dress that swayed gently with her movement. Morning, I said, my voice still rough with sleep. She turned a smile on her face that didn't quite reach her eyes. Good morning, Alexander, sleep well. I shrugged, pouring myself a cup of coffee. Well enough. You know me. I'm always up with the sun, she replied, sliding a plate of eggs and toast in front of me. We ate in silence, the events of yesterday hanging heavy in the air between us. I couldn't help but steal glances at her, noticing the way the sunlight caught in her hair, the curve of her neck as she sipped her coffee. I was thinking, Mom said, suddenly breaking the silence, we should explore the area today. There's supposed to be a nice hiking trail nearby. I nodded, grateful for the suggestion. Sounds good. Maybe it'll help clear our heads. She met my eyes then, and I saw a flicker of something: relief, disappointment before she looked away. Exactly, a bit of fresh air and exercise will do us both good. After breakfast, we set out on the trail. The forest was alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves, the air fresh and invigorating. For a while we walked in companionable silence, the physical activity helping to ease some of the tension between us. As we climbed a particularly steep section, Mom stumbled slightly without thinking. I reached out to steady her, my hand on her waist. She tensed at my touch, and I quickly pulled away. Sorry, I mumbled, looking anywhere but at her. It's fine, she said softly. Thank you. We continued on, but something had shifted again. The air seemed charged with an electric tension, every accidental brush of our hands or shoulders sending sparks through my body. T.S. We reached a clearing with a stunning view of the valley below. Mom walked to the edge, taking in the scenery. I stood back watching her. The sunlight caught her hair, creating a halo effect that took my breath away. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, turning to me with a smile. "Yeah," I replied, not taking my eyes off her beautiful. Her smile faltered as she caught the intensity of my gaze. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the air thick with unspoken words and forbidden desires. Mom was the first to look away, clearing her throat. "We should head back. It's getting late." The walk back was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts. As we approached the house, Mom suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Alexander," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "We need to talk about this." I knew immediately what she meant. "Do we?" I asked, my heart racing. She nodded, taking a deep breath. "What's happening between us? It's not right. We can't keep pretending. It's not there." "I know," I said softly, "but I can't help how I feel." Mom closed her eyes as if in pain. "Neither can I, but we're mother and son. We can't act on these feelings." I took a step closer to her, close enough to see the tears forming in her eyes. "Can't we?" "Mom," I'd never felt this way about anyone before. She looked up at me. Conflict is clear in her eyes. "Alexander, please, we can't do this." But even as she spoke, she didn't move away. We stood there inches apart, the air between us crackling with tension, slowly giving her every chance to pull away. I leaned in, our lips met in a soft, hesitant K******S. For a moment Mom remained still. Then with a small whimper, she said me back. It was like a dam breaking. All the pent-up tension and desire of the past few days poured out. As we deepened the K******S, my hands found her waist, pulling her closer, while hairs tangled in my hair. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily. Mom's eyes were wide, a mix of desire and shock in their depths. "We shouldn't have done that," she whispered, but she made no move to pull away. "But we did," I replied, my thumb tracing her cheekbone. "And I want to do it again." She closed her eyes, leaning into my touch. "This is wrong, Alexander, so wrong. Does it feel wrong?" I asked, placing soft K******S along her jaw. She shivered her hands, gripping my shoulders. "No," she admitted. "God help me. It feels right." We stood there for a long moment, holding each other. The line we'd just crossed, stretching out behind us. I knew there was no going back now, knew that what we were doing was taboo, forbidden. But in that moment, with Mom in my arms, I couldn't bring myself to care. "What do we do now?" I asked softly. Mom looked up at me, a mix of emotions playing across her face. "I don't know," she admitted. "But we can't tell anyone about this ever." I nodded, understanding the gravity of our situation. "It'll be our secret," I promised. She smiled sadly, reaching up to cup my face. "Our secret," she echoed before pulling me down for another K******S. As we made our way back to the house, hand in hand, I knew that everything had changed. The rest of our vacation stretched out before us, full of possibilities I had never dared to imagine before. It was wrong. It was forbidden. But in that moment it felt like the most right thing in the world. That night, as we lay together in Mom's bed, our bodies intertwined, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for us. How would we navigate this new, complicated relationship once we returned to our normal lives? But as Mom snuggled closer in her sleep, I pushed those thoughts aside. For now I would live in this moment, savoring every second of our forbidden love.